I'm gonna record these and put them on YouTube so that if anyone or any of you guys want access to it, it'll be there. The other things are if there's any references that we make to a book that we did like summarized or a podcast, that way you can send me the links and I'll put it in the description of the video. And if anyone wants to upload the video to their own pages, feel free. Um, Whatever, if this kicks off, then we can just make its own page. But I'm just trying to see what we can make of it. Make sense?
Sick, yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Who wants to go first? I'm thinking each person we give them like maybe like 5 to 7 minutes, more or less. Like less is fine, to go, and then we can go bounce to the next person, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Uh, I can go first if you guys want.
I can go first too.
Okay, go ahead. You can go first.
Okay, cool. So there's two topics. One of them is sustainability of textiles and clothing in the industry. So I learned this week through a few different resources that 85 to 90% of the new clothes that we buy ends up in landfills, and even when you donate it to charity boxes, what happens is, let's say you donate 100 pieces to a charity box. The charity will pick up the clothing from the drop-off box. They'll choose 5 to 10 pieces to put in their store, the best pieces that they think they can sell, and then they'll put the rest of the 90 to 95 pieces. They'll sell it to a distributor. The distributor will gather clothing from all the charities, and then they'll sell it for a really cheap price to secondhand clothes buyers who are often within third world countries. And then now that the other 90 to 95 pieces that the charity didn't use, let's say it arrives in Guyana, for example, then the store owner who bought it, he'll use the 5 to 10 pieces of clothing that he thinks he can sell, or hopefully there's more, and then he'll throw the rest of the clothing out in Guyana. So charitable boxes, they do help like 5 to 10% of the problem, but then otherwise they bundle them up and resell them to other countries who buy secondhand clothing, and it ends up in the dumps there as opposed to the dumps in Canada. So a few like solutions I was looking at, one of them is composting clothing. Um, it's possible, but it's not that easy. You need to have you take a it's like a regular compost pile. You take a combination of worms, maybe animal or human manure, dirt, and then 100% cotton textiles, and you put it all together in a compost pile, and then technically after a few months it disappears. People have done small trials of it in their garden, and it actually works. What else? But that's only gonna solve like a small percentage of the problem, like single digits. In addition to solve the greater problem of 85 to 90% of the textiles and clothing going to the garbage, we need to fix consumer habits. So people have to buy less and more quality material. So instead of buying like 10 pieces from H&M, maybe you want to buy one piece from Nike or something, and that shirt will last longer than the H&M shirt. Um, we also have to keep things longer. There's this calculation that says that if a piece of clothing is kept for 5 years, 9 months, then it does not have a detrimental cause to society, and that's extremely long. Some people wear clothes that long. I've pieces are even older than that, and they still last, and that's part of fixing the problem as well. And the other thing is when we have clothes that we don't want to use anymore, we actually have to provide it to them. We have to give it directly to someone who will use it. So an example is, if I have a sweater, I don't give it to necessarily the charity box. Maybe I have to give it to the centers downtown that are like giving it out to people, or maybe I have to find like maybe Dave will want my sweater, and then I give it directly to Dave, and like that way, it won't end up in a dump. I actually know where it's going. So yeah, that was one thing. One of my topics. The other topic was a new book that I started. It's called Start with Why. It's by Simon Sinek. I think it was written in 2011, but I've been enjoying it so far. So it's talking about how great leaders inspire everyone to take action. So it's the intro. Don't need to be born a leader. If we learn the patterns of how to inspire, anyone can be a leader. Then it got into some good examples. The first people who were trying to fly. There was a guy called Langley. He got a government grant at the time, which was extremely difficult. He had powerful friends. He had the greatest engineers. He had the best technology and the best educated people to help him. Then in contrast, there were the Wright brothers. The Wright brothers had no grants. They had no college education or advanced degrees. They just had a passion to fly, and they were well. Of course, they had to be committed and hard workers. So they were able to inspire their team of less qualified and less educated people to fly before Langley just because of the way that they were able to inspire them to get the job done. Another good example that the book gave was the early days of Apple. Steve Jobs' partner was Steve, sorry if I say it wrong, Wozniak, and he had a why. His why was how to make affordable computers for the masses and accessible to everyone. So not just rich corporations could own computers, so that every person in their home could own a computer. So that was the why of his business, making it accessible to every common person, and that was attributed to why they'd grown so quickly and how he inspired people. It wasn't to make the best computer or to make the most profits. It was literally to get a computer in every home. Um, and then the last example in the chapter that I read was about Martin Luther King. He knew how to inspire people. In 1963, on August 28th, 11 a.m., they didn't have internet, they didn't have social media, they didn't send out written notices, but somehow they got 250,000 people to gather at the nation's capital for to fight for to fight for the things that they're fighting for, and his inspiration of word of mouth spread like through all the 250,000 people. It wasn't like it was something they posted on Facebook or something like that. So that's what the book was talking about there. And then it had a really good paragraph that I'll read and I'll be finished my part. Great leaders, in contrast, are able to inspire people to act. Those who are able to inspire give people a sense of purpose or belonging, and that has little to do with any external incentive or benefit to be gained. Those who truly lead are able to create a following of people who act not because they were swayed, but because they are inspired. For those people who are inspired, the motivation to act is deeply personal. They are less likely to be swayed by incentives. Those who are inspired are willing to pay a premium or endure inconvenience and even personal suffering. Those who are able to inspire will create a following of supporters, voters, customers, workers who act for the good of the whole, not because they have to, but because they want to. So it's talking about well, like making it more practical in the sense of a business. You just don't want to tell an employee to, hey, you have to do these following systems. You kind of want to make it personal to them as to why they should be doing it and how it affects them and how it affects the team. Um, and when you get them to make it personal and to actually feel that they want to do it, it's even better than providing more money or different monetary incentives and things like that when you get someone emotionally involved. So yeah, that's what I have to present this week.
Cool. Wow. Thanks for sharing that. That last quote that you had. Do you mind sharing that in either the Discord or WhatsApp group, and then I'll put that in the description.
Sounds good.
Yeah. No rush. Just whenever you can. Even in the WhatsApp group is fine.
Great.
I can go next if that's cool with you guys. Let Suroy or Naz, you guys go.
That's
Yeah,
cool
no,
with
I'm
me.
fine with that.
Cool, cool. All right. So I had two things that I wanted to share. I'll start with the one that might be less appealing to everyone. It's more kind of business and entrepreneur focused. So I'm reading this book called Zero to One, and it's about it's like the subheadings Notes on Startups or How to Build the Future. So the previous chapter that we talked about last week was a quick little economics refresher, which was reminding us the difference between perfect competition and monopolies. And real quick, in like two sentences. So perfect competition is where there are a lot of players in a specific market selling a very similar product, and thereby competition is high. The market sets the price, and margins are relatively low. Even if new people come in, what ends up happening is the market will eventually reach an equilibrium because those new players come in, the a lot of them or existing players start losing profits, and a lot of the companies either fold or leave the market, which then sets the price back at the equilibrium. On the other side, we got a monopoly, which is a company that owns a specific advantage that allows it to set the price on its product. And there's a lot of profit to be made there because they have no competitors. So then the next chapter talks about, and the reason why they bring that up is they were saying that if you're gonna create a startup or a tech startup specifically, you should aim towards creating a monopolistic startup, because it doesn't make sense to enter the perfect competition because chances are you're gonna make less money, you're gonna have less of an impact, and you're just entering a market that already exists, so you're not really innovating. Then this chapter for this week was 4 characteristics that you should aim for or that tell you that your startup is a monopoly. So the first thing is you have proprietary technology. So obviously this is the biggest advantage, whether that be through barriers of entry or some sort of innovation. They note that it's got to be at least 10 times better than its closest substitute in some important dimension to lead a real monopolistic advantage. So the clearest way is again to invent something completely new. So if you think about Google, they were a search engine when they first started, and they had a few competitors: Ask Jeeves, Yahoo, and I think even eventually Bing as well. But their ability to uh, like spit out search results quicker, and their algorithm was their monopolistic advantage. And then actually branding plays into another part afterwards, as well as network effects. So I won't get into those because those are actually subsequent characteristics. So let's stick to the first one still. The second thing that they note about proprietary technology is that another way, first way is to create something new, or they radically improve an existing solution. So once you're 10 times better at radically improving an existing solution, then you escape competition. So the example they gave here was PayPal. So prior to PayPal being there, and again, this was when we were very young, the way you would finish an auction on eBay was to mail a check. So PayPal made it extremely quick to complete a transaction because you could do it right away, right when the auction completes. The other thing was Amazon. So what they did in the beginning was they were an online book real like a retailer, right? So they changed the way that people would go and buy either old books or rare books, by converting all that online. And their next best alternative or substitute was actually going into the bookstore, which is night and day in terms of the difference. So that's the first one, proprietary technology. The second thing was network effects. So then that's when you make a product that's more useful as people use it. So the example they gave is Facebook, because obviously the more people that use it, the more information they have, but the more popular it becomes. Because if you only have 4 people that that use Facebook, you might be less inclined to use it. But then as more people use it, you're gonna hop on it. And so one thing they noted there was that it must start well with especially small markets. And again, to go back to the Facebook example, Facebook started with just Harvard students, and then afterwards, that's when it became bigger and more popular. The third thing that gives your company a monopolistic trait or advantage is economies of scale. So monopoly businesses get stronger as they get bigger. And the example they give here was software startups. So they enjoy dramatic economies of scale because the marginal cost of producing another copy of the software is close to zero. And then a specific example was Twitter. So Twitter, at the time of the writing of the book, they already had 250 million users, and they don't really need to add too many customized features in order to acquire more. And so there's no real reason why it should ever stop growing. Now, obviously, this book was written years ago, and you know that Twitter is still popular, but then there's other forms of social media that are gaining more traction. But Twitter still commands its specific niche, which is literally like, you know, 1 sentence ideas or thoughts that you can put on there. And obviously, that's grown to just more than a sentence. The last thing was branding. So a company has a monopoly on its own, just on its brand by definition, right? So if you create a strong brand, that's a powerful way to claim a monopoly. And the example they gave is Apple, which is the strongest tech brand, and it stands for sleek, minimalist design and close control over the consumer experience. Another thing to end off on this is that it's important to note that beginning with brand over substance is very dangerous, because no tech company, especially, can be built on branding alone. So that's what I had for that. And then the next thing I had that's more kind of appealing to the masses is a podcast that I listened to by Andy Frisella, who I've been listening to for a long time. He's like he started a fitness nutrition company out of his like garage basically. And now he's got a bunch of different companies that are umbrella companies under it, and they do upwards of 9 figures in business. So he talks about happiness being an equation, and there's two myths to happiness, right? And the first myth is that it's something that just happens to you, and that it comes and goes as it pleases, and that it's not something you can create by your own actions. That's myth number one. That's not true. The second myth is that there's some sort of secret to happiness, and you have to be one of like the chosen one, or it's a complicated algorithm, or that you can buy it. That's myth number two. So he says that there's an equation to happiness that's comprised of three important variables. The first thing is discipline. So the definition of discipline, he starts off from the dictionary definition, rather, excuse me, and it is to train yourself to do something in a controlled and habitual way. And he goes, hey, let me take it a step further and kind of dumb it down. So discipline is the ability to keep the promises you make to yourself. So it kind of builds hand in hand with integrity, right? So you got to consistent. So the example he gives is like you wake up, you go to sleep the night before. You say that you're gonna either get up at this time or do something the next day. Then you wake up and you waver from that, right? For whatever reason, right? And you need to consistently say no to what he calls as a bitch voice that tries to get you to give up or make excuses, right? You gotta consistently do the work whether you feel it or not. You gotta execute if things are going well or not, and you got to have no deviation, and you have to do this for a long time even when you have nothing in your tank. So you have to identify what needs to be done and do it and keep your word to yourself, right? um he says that the reason for this is that there's a level of confidence and peace that comes with this, right? Because you then understand that you are the biggest factor in determining your happiness, period. And not only does this help in your happiness, but it helps you in progressing towards whatever it is your bigger picture is. So that's when it goes into the second variable. So again, the first one is discipline. The second one is purpose, right? So you got to make sure that what you're doing has a purpose and you know how it fits in your bigger picture. So you got to identify the why. Why does me waking up at this time every day make sense in my bigger picture, right? It's because it helps me get up. I become, more productive. Now, if you're getting up to just, like waste your time, go do play video games or something like that, might not be the greatest use of your time, and it might not be the best example of discipline. Versus if you get up and you do a workout in the morning, okay, I'm looking after my health so I can live longer and take care of my family, or I can sharpen my mind, whatever it is, that makes more sense, right? So an example he gives is I want to become an NFL athlete, but I don't care about winning the game. Or I want to become a soldier, but I don't care about winning the war. That doesn't make sense, right? So he says that discipline's not an end, it's a means to an end, right? So you need to find out where the discipline and where those specific day-to-day tasks fit in with your bigger picture. If you don't know why you need to do something, you probably won't execute on the day-to-day tasks. So that goes into what Andrew just finished saying about inspiring others. When you're leading people, you need to explain to them why they're doing what they're doing, or why you're asking them to do what they're doing. Um, to be happy, you have to be disciplined, and to be disciplined, you have to be purposeful. So it's not you do the discipline, you find your purpose, and then you put in the third variable, and then you become happy. It's kind of like a circle that goes in both directions. So again, discipline plus purpose plus blank equals happiness. Now the last variable is gratitude. So he starts off by explaining if happiness was a coin, one side is the ability to get what you want, and the other side is the appreciation for what you already have, right? It's super, super essential not to neglect the latter. If you're always looking to the future and always looking to become, looking to progress or get better or accomplish certain things, and you don't take the time to appreciate what you have and enjoy what you have right now, then you go insane. He says that you should create a ritual for gratitude, and the way Andy does it specifically is he every time he's brushing his teeth in the morning and in the night before he goes to bed, he thinks about what he's appreciative of. And, his dogs, his health, his cars, his companies, the experiences he gets to go through. Um, so those are very important things, and I think it's something I used to do that, and then lost sight of it, and then I re-listened to this podcast this morning, and I was like, oh man, I got to start doing that again. So again, the equation was discipline plus purpose plus gratitude equals happiness. And just to close off, the thing that he says about gratitude is that when you think of someone who is grateful, whether they're successful or not, one thing that usually they have is a certain level of happiness. People who are ungrateful, like think of the people that who are ungrateful. They're usually like complainers or whiners, or they have this victim mentality on why things are not their fault. But usually when people are like genuinely grateful, they don't carry those same burdens of characteristics along with them. So that's what I had. Suroy, you want to grab the mic next?
Yeah, actually kind of wanted to follow up on some of the things you said that I agree with. I like the um, discipline was an ends to a means, not a means in itself. I'm not sure if I mentioned it on one of our previous talks, but something I was reading before was like differentiating between the two and how like knowing what is your goals and differentiating between a means goal or an ends goal. For example, it was like being rich isn't an end goal, it's a means to an end goal. And then determining why you want to be rich or why do you want to have a certain amount of money, and then what is your actual end goal. Like for example, if it's to like travel is your end goal, then starting a business to give you the opportunity to reach your end goal, or to have like let's say you want to do a dance class or you want to have this experience, that would be an end goal, and the only reason you want to do that goal is to experience it, where a means to an end goal is something you want to help you reach a means goal. So I thought that was really interesting between differentiating between the two, and I agree that discipline does help with almost everything else. As well with gratitude. For my birthday a couple months ago, my friend gave me a gratitude journal. So I've been using that for like the last 2 months, and I found that was really useful. And it reminds me of the quote, I think it's Seneca, that says, "It's not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." And I found that just doing this daily habit of reminding myself what you're grateful for is really important, and keeps you grounded, especially if you're living in Canada. Like, there's so much to be grateful for that kind of silly that we're all miserable sometimes. So I really did like your part. What
Sorry,
I
sorry.
had is a
What was
little bit
that quote?
different. It's a Seneca quote.
Yeah.
It
What was that again?
is it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor.
Such a good quote.
Yeah, I like.
Mhm.
Sorry, go ahead. Next time I'll just take a note and I'll ask for it afterwards. I don't want to disrupt your thought process. Go ahead.
No
Oh,
worries. My
sorry.
Mhm.
One thing I liked from Dave's was that he was talking about when you're doing something and you can make more profit when it's easy to multiply it. For example, software. You develop the software, that's all the upfront cost, but making the second and third and fourth CD doesn't really cost anything much extra. So that was going back to what Suroy was talking about last time about online education. So I've been thinking about it, and yeah, you'd make the course up front, and then there's no extra cost. You just the only extra cost is the cost of acquisition of your customers. So yeah, I was listening to what Dave said, and it reminded me what you were saying.
It's super interesting how a lot of these things have an overlapping kind of I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, themes,
messages.
messages. Yeah. So yeah, even the whole gratitude and discipline and that stuff. So that's cool. So thanks for sharing that, Andrew.
So my thing, what I've been doing this week is the last 3 or 4 days, I've been joining this summit. It's Influencer Summit. Had a lot of good speakers. It popped up on my Instagram because I follow Brendan Burchard, who's like an author and a high performance coach, and he created this summit. And this year was virtual and it was free, so I ended up joining. It was like it was 3 days, like 6 hours a day, and then they had a bonus day. So a lot of it was tailored to like influencers, and like they had like authors, podcasters, YouTubers, things like that. So a lot of the stuff that I have not too relevant to you guys, but I did want to talk about one of the players or one of the speakers. It was a football player called Anthony Trucks. He used to be an NFL player, but I think he only had like a 2 month career because he had a fluke injury that kind of ended his career. And then he ended up like becoming a personal trainer at a local gym, and then decided what he wanted to do next. And then he ended up trying to do like the motivational speech thing, but it didn't go too well, and he didn't understand why. And then he was talking to some of his friends and like other influencers, and he was telling a story, and his like he came from like a single mother, I believe, like was a was adopted. Um, like had to really deal with a lot of personal things. I think like one of his parents died, if I or a best friend died, something like a lot of like really big tragedies. And they were like, "Why are you doing this like very surface level motivational thing? Like you got to talk about your story." And when he made that shift, like everything started clicking. So one of his messages was the message and the messenger must align. You can have the exact same message as someone else, but if the messenger is not matching, your energy will be off and the audience, it won't click with them. So you have to make sure that those two things are in line. And he was talking about pinky finger power. So when he was doing he became an American Ninja Warrior, and when he was like training, his coach was telling him he needed to work out on his pinky and his ring finger to increase his grip strength. And he was like, "Why? Aren't my like index finger and my middle finger much stronger?" And he's like, "Actually, no, the middle finger is actually your strongest because it connects down your hand all the way down to your wrist. So you're saying that is actually like where a lot of your power comes from." And he was talking about how you just neglect your pinky because it's so small and insignificant, but actually 50% of your results come from that. So he said because it's so small and insignificant, sometimes we forget about it. And he was talking about your pinky finger power is something that a lot of your results and who you are come from and where your power comes from, but you have forgotten it, or it's something you've just grown up with so you don't even realize anymore. So his strategy was asking your friends and family what is one trait of yours that they wish they had that they could download into their lives for success. So like messaging people who know you really well and family members, and then it will give you some insights into something that you might not have been aware of yourself. And that's kind of what he did when he was talking to his like friends about his story. He realized it was actually like his ability to like adapt and his grit and tenacity that was like something they really admired of him that he never even realized. So when he made that change, that's when he started seeing results. And he was talking about when he first, like when he was first told that he needed to make the change or the shift, he was really scared because he's like, I just put in like a year or 18 months into this, and I don't want to start from zero. But he realized that he wasn't starting from zero, he was starting from experience. So just because you're going to change paths or pivot, you're never starting from zero. You have that experience, you have those transferable skills, the insights and experience from your other things that you tried. So he said don't be afraid to make that change because you're not starting from zero. You still have those skills, and once everything aligns, things will work for you. And then he talks about some of the other strategies he uses. So he has something called a triad. And he says it's three people that he uses, and it's one person who knows you really well and the industry you want to go into. Because if they don't know who you are, they won't know your strengths and they won't know how you can work in the industry. And then it's someone who knows you, but works in a different industry that you're trying to move into. And he said this because this person can give you a different perspective and how there might be things in your current industry that isn't working as well as it should be, and you can use things from different industries and incorporate into your industry to kind of be innovative. And then it's one person who doesn't know business at all, and they're just there to give you like a different perspective, like a consumer level perspective. And he's saying using these three people, he helps like come up with new ideas and make strategies off of that. And then he said, don't be afraid to fail. A lot of people, they're so scared of like putting something out there. They want it to be perfect. But he said, put out your first patched up version as soon as possible. Like it doesn't matter that it's really bad, you just need to get it out there and then you can start making the changes. And he says it has to fail so that you can improve. Like the biggest thing would be if you never start, you can never get better. And he talks about they would Apple can never release the iPhone 12 if it didn't release the iPhone 1. And you can't try to release the iPhone 12 right away. You have to start with that first version and then keep improving. And then I have some quotes that I really liked from him, and it was action and suffering. So like I feel like with like anxiety and like overthinking and you just like these things that you know you should be doing, but you overthink it and then you never do it. And that's where the anxiety comes from, and that's where we get anxious. And as soon as you take action and you start, you realize it wasn't as bad as you thought it was. And that's how you start making progress. And he says, another quote was, some people don't like Jesus, so of course some people aren't going to like you. But you don't have to, not everyone, you're not going to be for everyone. Some people need Jesus, some people need another person, someone might need you. So just be the best human you can be and try to help as many people as you can. And he talks about picking your one demographic and target them. Because if you try to speak to everyone, then your message won't really click with anyone. So he kind of talked about like someone who is like someone who's preaching on a soapbox in public, like the people who are just like screaming on a microphone and you just walk by them, you don't really listen because their messages they're trying to speak to everyone, so no one really listens. And he said if you have like a one-on-one conversation like downtown Toronto when you hear two people talking, um, you try to eavesdrop. So he's saying if you can target your audience and have a real conversation with them, when you target your audience, you'll connect with them and you'll have a deeper conversation, and then the others will eavesdrop. So you don't have to try to target everyone. If you go really niche at the beginning, other people will come to you. They'll try to eavesdrop into your conversation, and then you can attract them. And he talks about creating a process. So those were I really liked his speech. I know it was for a conference, so I don't think there's any replays you can listen to, but um, the the creator of the summit, he was turning it into a podcast. So he said some of the episodes will go up there eventually. So I'll see if I can get you a link for the rest of that speech. I really liked it. And then the book I've been reading this week is Think Like a Monk by Shetty. The episode that I did was talking about ego, so I'll quickly go over some of the things that I liked. And it starts with a quote, and it says, they are forever free who renounces all selfish desires and break away from the ego cage of I, me, and mine. So I thought it was really interesting. He talks about how when we are humble, we are open to learning because we understand how much we don't know. And on the flip side, being a know it all closes ourselves off to learning. And this false self confidence is rooted in ego. And he talks about the difference between an ego versus a false ego. And he says an ego fears what people will say, um, versus self-esteem, where self-esteem filters what people will say, and an ego compares to others, where self-esteem compares to themselves, and then ego wants to prove themselves, self-esteem wants to be themselves, and an ego knows everything, but a self-esteem can learn from anyone. So just trying to, and he said there's no way you can overcome your ego. That is not the goal. It's about a daily practice and a journey of trying to minimize the ego. And he said, like, the ego tries to protect you, but in reality, it's your biggest vulnerability. So the ego is a mask that is the difference between who you are in public versus who you are at home. And it's this insecurity that makes us want to convince ourselves and everyone else that we are special so we create a dishonest version of ourselves to seem more knowledgeable. We try to seem more accomplished and more confident. But the difference and knowing the difference of your ego versus your true self is who are you when no one is watching. So I thought that was really interesting, and how the ego makes us liars. It will create lies and stories to try to impress other people, and it will create false hierarchies. So not only do we try to make ourselves seem better, we also put others down so we seem better relatively. So the ego judges, and it looks at someone and it'll pick the thing that they can put down so they seem better about themselves. So a lot of judging others, I find, is something that is really prevalent in our society and something that I found really interesting. And the idea that it prevents growth. So the ego doesn't listen, it just waits for to respond. So I found this a lot, especially when I was doing sales, is you just wait for you're not really listening to the customer, you're just waiting for a turn to respond. So you're not even catching what they're saying and you're missing out on all this opportunities to learn something. And then he talks about in an argument, the idea of a soldier versus scout mindset. So a soldier's job is to protect and defend their side. They're trying to win. Where a scout's job is to accurately assess the situation and report the truth, even if it's not pleasant. So you have to be able to let go of your own beliefs, and instead of when you're arguing with someone and trying to win the argument, you're trying to find the truth. You're not trying to win. You're trying to be on their side, and how can you two come to a agreement together? And then he says, you must learn to let go of your own held beliefs to learn, because you can't add more to a full cup. You must empty the cup before you can add something new. So the idea of like unlearning is just as important as learning, and how ego is double-edged. So the ego or egotism or an inflated ego is usually a mask for low self-esteem, because as soon as you find out or your weaknesses get exposed, you go from I'm the greatest at everything to I'm the worst at everything. So this ego is very um, volatile and vulnerable, because as soon as it cracks, everything kind of falls down. So you want to build self-esteem up. You want to build up your self-esteem and confidence and humility. So knowing that you are great at some things, but not so great at others, but you're well-intentioned, but imperfect. The key is to build that confidence and high self-esteem where you can accept yourself for who you are, humble, imperfect, and striving to improve. So the ego fears failure, but confidence embraces it because it knows that's the only way to improve itself. And talking about accumulating small wins builds confidence. And then they talk about this gold medal swimmer, Jessica Hardy, and how she talks about her long-term goals are what I would consider dreams, and my short-term goals are what I would consider small daily, weekly wins. So small things that you can achieve every day to build toward your dream. And then it talks about don't compare yourselves to others, only your previous self. So you want to make sure that you're not comparing yourself to others, which reminds me of the quote, comparison is the thief of joy, but instead compare yourself to yourself, because that's the only person who is an uh, equal and fair comparison, because you don't know what someone else is going through. Like you might look at someone's car and compare your car to theirs and feel bad about yourself, but you're not sure if that person goes home, he's in a dysfunctional relationship or has a health disease or something like that. So it's not fair to only compare yourself to um, one area of another person's life, because there's so many other areas. So the only fair comparison is to your previous self, and that's kind of what I had. I had one more thing, some like practices that he talks about for um, managing your ego. One of them is when you take a compliment, like thank them, be gracious, but then attribute it to whoever taught it to you. So praise your teachers or how you learned this, because sharing that success keeps you humble. And see yourself like a vessel, because everything that you know came from someone else, and after you have to share it with someone else. So you're just a vessel that information comes through. So there's no you, it's not about you, it's about sharing the information. And he says that true greatness is inspiring others. And that's kind of what I had for today.
That's super cool. As you were saying that the comparison is the thief of joy. One of my previous managers actually, I had a DM conversation with him the other day, and posted something on my story from another account. I think it's like before 5 a.m. or something like that. And I said the first step to accepting yourself is to stop comparing yourself to others. And so he responded back to that in my DM saying comparison is the thief of joy. Remember that. And I was like, I tell because I've heard that saying before from Lewis Howes. And I'm like, I said I tell myself that constantly, but it's tough when your subconscious's first instinct is to compare. So I'm sure all of you guys have been through this. You know, and it's normal, right? I'll be vulnerable in saying it. Like when you hear someone is doing better than you at something that you're doing, or they have a certain car or something, oftentimes, or they have an attractive girlfriend or something, you'll tell yourself reasons as to why they got that or you don't have it, and you justify it. And inadvertently, you're comparing your situation to theirs, right? And so, what you want to do is every time that happens, is don't beat yourself up for it, but gently recourse your mind to saying, no, they got that through whatever they did. I'm only comparing myself to what I have and what I've done in the past and how I'm going to better myself. So then he responded back saying he learned it from Damian Lillard, a basketball player, and he said that comparison is a natural instinct. You can't blame yourself for doing it. However, you are in control of how you react to it. So he's like, it's like being attracted to another girl when in a relationship. It's not much different. It's okay to instinctively feel that way, but it's not okay if you act on it in a negative way, if that makes sense. So I thought that was interesting. Um,
That kind of
God, yeah.
that actually reminded me of one thing where he talked about like humans' natural instincts, and he talked about how if you know the concept of like deer in the headlights, and how like a deer's as soon as a deer sees car lights, it freezes, and he's like that doesn't really make sense because it just ends up getting hit. But the reason why deers do that is they freeze when they see danger. It's because it works for predators because they don't want to trigger the predator response to chase them. So that's why it freezes. But it hasn't adapted to modern society like cars. And he talks about humans' natural instinct is to be negative because when we were like evolutionary, we were designed to like be fearful of a tiger jumping out of a bush or those dangers. But now in society, now we're always there's so much information that we're always looking at the negative version of it, and that's kind of causing harm or more harm than good now. So we have to kind of adapt ourselves and be wary of that.
Awesome. Um, Naz, to close us off, did you want to share that space comment or the fact?
Yeah, it's not gonna be as long as
That's okay if
the
you give us
effort,
two
but
seconds. Go for it.
something really cool that I used to be really into the universe and space and all that stuff. And a really cool fact I learned a while ago, I guess, was every time you look at the sun or I guess stars, you're looking back into space or sorry, back into time. Um uh you know, because on the scale that we live on, we think that light is, I guess, basically instantaneous, practically speaking, but um, technically the sun's light takes 8 minutes to get from where it is to us. So whatever you're seeing of the sun at that time is actually an 8 minute delayed picture. And you can take that onto a bigger time scale where, um, you're looking at stars, which, if you say it's 1 light year away, it literally took that time 1 year at the speed of light to get to your eyes. Um, so there's stuff that you can look at that's maybe, 10, 100, or even a million light years away, where you're basically looking to time 10, 100, a million years ago. And I think it's really cool because, we actually recently uh, upgraded our Hubble telescope, or we're going to. And if aliens, maybe 100 million light years away, are looking back at us, um, they could be looking at us and our entire lives, our kids, our grandkids, our entire lineage could be long and gone, just like Mars. We could be looking at Mars right now and we don't see anything. But if there was a civilization there maybe a billion years ago, aliens could be looking at them right now and we wouldn't even exist in their eyes. But they see the Martians living right now. So I thought that was really cool. So if you look into certain parts of the universe, if you point your really strong telescope into certain parts of the universe, you could see back in um, 5 billion years ago, uh, into the past, I guess. So that was just my cool fact, I guess.
I never. It makes sense, and I made the connection as you were saying that, but I never realized that that's actually what was happening.
Yeah,
That
because if you sat in a dark room where there was no lights except say one light bulb, and there's two guys sitting there, they're facing each other, they would not see each other until they turn on a light. And although it seemed instantaneous to them, it's technically not. You have the photons coming from the light bulb, reflecting off whatever surface you're looking at, and then entering your eyes, and that's why you see. So off, it seems instantaneous off the scale that we live on, but if you spread that out over a long enough, big enough scale, it implies cool facts like that. And not only can you look back into space or look back into time, but you can also space travel, which is really cool. Astronauts that we currently have already space traveled. Our current satellites that we have that are in orbit, they technically space travel because the faster you move, the slower time technically uh, happens, I guess. Um, Astronauts have measured that, and for our satellites to function mathematically the way they do, they have to take into account that they're moving a lot faster than the actual core of the planet and us. So they have to take that into account in their mathematics to do GPS tracking. It's not like just because they're moving faster that they're taking that account. They actually exist on a different time plane than we do. Very small. It's like points. I forget what it is, but it's very, very small. But albeit it still exists. And so at faster speeds, it's more noticeable.
so wait, if I'm an astronaut and I leave and go and travel in space, and
Yep.
I'm out there for 5 months,
Yep.
okay, and I come back.
Yeah, you will technically not be on the none of us are really actually on the specific exact same time plane, but you will definitely be on the fringes compared to all of us. You will
Right,
definitely have time traveled.
but will I be like? Is it as if time went slower for me, or will I age quicker as a result of moving quicker out there?
So time would be slower for you, so we would have aged fractionally quicker.
I see. Okay, so I that's a hack to preserving your age relative to Earth's
Yes,
time. Interesting. Okay.
right,
Ah,
right.
yes, that
So
makes sense then, because it was an
yeah,
interstellar, right? When they jump on that one planet, and the one dude stays in the orbit, and they come back, and he was there for like 20 years.
that's right, exactly.
Interesting.
Yep. Yep.
Wow.
Although the speeds that we're moving at currently with the astronauts and satellites, they're not that fast in comparison, but because they're moving a lot faster than we actually move, there is a fractional difference in time. And so when we get a lot faster and a lot of the stuff like asteroids, and there's these things called neutron stars that create really heavy gravity wells. A lot of those orbits, they create really fast speeds for objects and particles, and so those things move experience time completely, not completely different, but a lot different compared to what we do. And again, it's all relative. Uh, Even me, Dave, all of us in here, we actually live on different time frames, time planes. It's all generally the same, but again, there's no infinites in the world. It's not like we're all specifically living on a measurable time plane. Um, so I think, yeah, I think all that stuff is pretty cool.
Super interesting. Um. Wow. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, you guys
Uh.
too. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Welcome. I want in the comments. Monty is saying that what his biggest favorite space fact is the difference between constellation and asterisms. He said what we call constellations aren't the technical word. A constellation is a zone in the sky, and groupings of stars and formations within that constellation are asterisms. I didn't even know that was a
Mm,
word.
yeah, me too. Wow.
So, cool. Anything else for anyone before we close off? I appreciate you guys taking the time and doing this stuff.
So usually we would like talk about any business ideas we had during the week.
Okay.
So this week I didn't have per se a business idea, but I had like someone asked me a couple weeks ago, what my legacy is going to look like. And when I was younger, I used to be like, make $1 billion, make all this money, but that wasn't really anything practical. Now that I get older, I've lost interest in making $1 billion. I'm just looking at like spending time on things that I actually want to do. So one of them went back to the renewable resources and sustainable textiles and fabric industry. So I was looking at like one of the legacy things that I wouldn't mind doing is like helping in this field. So the practical way that I'm going to go about and do it is the town of Markham is the only place in Canada where it's illegal to throw away clothing into a landfill. They have their own town of Markham boxes that are governed by the regular charity groups. So my plan this week is to contact the city of Markham, explain to them that I would like to do a trial for composting the textiles and fabrics. I want them to provide me with like a certain amount of cotton materials that people are going to throw away anyway, and that's my goal to get from them. And then my second goal is to ask them if I can experiment with it on Markham Fairgrounds, which is a huge piece of land in Markham that they own. And then I would like to do a small trial to seeing if I can actually get the fabric to be composted. So
Oh.
it's nothing to do with making myself money, but it's something I've been thinking about, like I'll be interested in doing to kind of help the planet, and but it's not money oriented.
You know what's interesting? I actually saw one of those boxes at the field, literally a 30-second walk from my house where I run, and I didn't know what it was. So if you want me to get that phone number for you, I could hook you up. It's on the box there.
Oh yeah, next time you go for a run, you can just take a picture. Thanks.
I'll get it for you. Yeah, yeah. I'll get it for you by tomorrow, if
Do
not
you
today.
do you have any ideas this week?
Yeah, I had one actually. One of the things I want to do, and playing that game Amnesia has been really inspirational because Ruben. One of the things that I do want to do is create some sort of like a horror story plot thing, whether it be for a movie or a game. And so Amnesia was really good. And the other thing is my sister's very passionate about horror movies as well, and she minored in film, so that's one thing. So I was one of the things, it was kind of based off Amnesia, but having a plot and the whole story about Amnesia, because the way we perceive video games is that, and most of them, you play to win, right? But when I started this game, I had no exposure to this series of games prior to this sequel. Was a little thing comes up in your very first loading screen, and it says, "Don't play this game to win. Play this game to immerse yourself in the world and the story." And so I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And so you can actually die in the movie, in the game. See, I even called it a movie because it's kind of like you're experiencing what the character is going through. She's alone, she's pregnant, and she's just survived a plane crash, and everyone around her has died due to a creature that's living in the cave. And so that same concept of surviving through a story, I thought would have been super interesting to do it in something very similar to The Revenant, where Leonardo DiCaprio is kind of stranded and has to survive in the woods. And initially the enemies or the antagonists of the game could be the elements and animals. Then you can kind of evolve it to either natives that live there that perceive you as some sort of evil, or just spirits and stuff like that. So that was interesting. I'm trying to get that creative part of my mind flowing a little bit from that perspective. Then another thing was when I read that thing in 0 to 1 about network effect businesses that scale as you get more people on it. One thing came up was like, and Andrew, you and I have talked about this before, where if it's like, hey, I need a real estate agent, or hey, I need a plumber, or some sort of tradesperson, or something, some sort of service, what would you guys do to find those people? There's two things that come to my mind, but I wanted to kind of open up the conversation.
Google it.
Google it. Okay, so online search engine, that's the first thing, and you just search on who has the best reputation around your area. There's another one as well.
Friends and
The other
family.
thing I sometimes do is if I remember that you said that you repaired your door and I need to repair my door, then I might
Who'd you
ask you.
use? Exactly. So Suroy just said that as well. A referral, right? Did I catch that right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So referral. Those are the two things. So I was thinking, well, what if we create some sort of an online repository where, because you can hack a Google, what's the reviews, right? You can just get a bunch of Gmails theoretically, verify the email addresses, and then just spam the ratings. But what if you created a website or a platform where you create a profile, list what you can help with, like plumbing, even things like intangibles like leadership, fishing, you know what I mean? And you put your location, and then people kind of search the genre, right? And they post what they need help with, right? So, hey team, I need to. Here's a very clear example. I am a new fisherman that lives in Markham, Ontario. I want to know where I can river fish safely and where there can be some good catch, good game. So then people would see that and be like, hey, Dave, here's a good spot I go to. Now, again, obviously, a lot of fishermen would not want to reveal their secret spots. Let's put that aside for now, right? Let's just keep it super high level and just stay with me for a second. So then if they post something and I say that actually helped me, I upvote that and they get credibility. And then you can build that credibility to do what it is you want with it. I don't know what. But I thought that would be interesting. And how could you? One question was, how do you incentivize people to help one another out? But I thought that was an interesting one that I just kind of wrote down in my book. So Naz, if you're unfamiliar with what we're talking about, is every week at the end of the session, we just kind of speak about any cool ideas that we thought of to see if any of them stick. And so what I have is, me personally, I have a book, literally a book that I just flip the pages and write different ideas in. So the idea is if we come up with something that's cool or everyone's like, yo, remember that idea you came up with last week? Like, let's talk about that. Then there might be something that's worth discovering or diving deeper into.
Yeah, so what I thought was a cool idea for maybe a couple months now since COVID started was but it already exists was watching movie with your fan base. Uh it would have been more of an app, but I just found out that exists with that Amazon and Borat movie we watched together. I think it's super cool.
Oh,
Uh
so there
yeah.
is an app that you can use. So I'll expose you to it. We're actually watching another movie with the community on Tuesday night. So there's three different ways to do it that I've identified. The first one is Amazon Prime was the last one that I know that came
Mhm.
to step at this table. And because Amazon owns Twitch, that's why they're like, hey, if you and your subscribers or viewers have Amazon Prime, connect it to your Twitch account. You can stream whatever movie is available in your region that's available in that person's region as well. So if I have a movie from Canada, Amazon Prime, they can't watch it in the US, right? But if it overlaps, then they can watch it together. And the second thing is Netflix Party, which is a Chrome extension. So again, I host a room on Netflix Party Chrome extension, and I invite whoever else wants to come, and they can watch. And it's the same thing that we did on Friday night, except with only Netflix movies or shows. So we're gonna watch Superbad on Tuesday evening, as whoever wants to come through. So if you want to test that out, there's that. Then there's a third one called Cast, and it's Cast with a K, Kast. And the cool thing about Cast is those first two that I mentioned. Well, Twitch you can watch from your phone, so that's fine. But Netflix Party you have to be on a Chrome browser, so you have to be on a desktop or a laptop. But this third one, Cast, is mobile friendly, so there's an app as well, and you can share your screen on whatever it is you're watching. Obviously, like sometimes Netflix and Amazon don't work because they can identify when you're streaming
Right.
from a device. But like, I mean, between you and I, like I've done it before where it's like a Google movie where I'll rent it. I did Mortal Kombat and I just shared my screen and everyone could watch. Now sometimes it was a little iffy with the audio because of that, but if you've got a movie on your computer that you want to watch with a community, Cast does that as well.
Yeah, I just think that's a super cool idea, especially with coronavirus right now, people spending more time at home, gives a more sense of community, and also because movie theaters are a little bit threatened, and this technically could be the new way that people watch movies together. It's always been an issue with pirating and all that, but the way Amazon and Twitch has implemented it is such a it just seems super clean.
Mm-hmm.
And to take it to the next level, like you can integrate it into concerts and sporting events. So, for
There you
example,
go.
a lot of people like to watch, Raptors together, but they can't do it right now. So, if there's a way for them to like watch it with their friends, or same thing with the concerts, it seems like a lot of concerts will have to be online. But like the best part is like pre-drinking with your friends or something, whatever people like to do, and then going to the actual concert with them. So I guess an extension of that would be figuring out how to do it for live sports events and live entertainment events.
Yeah, I see this going huge, just so many different directions. If there's a way that I'm surprised that there's not a Twitch subcategory just for movies.
Yeah,
Um, it'd be cool just to go to your favorite streamer. This new movie comes out. Before you can enter the stream, there's a pop-up that comes. You pay maybe $3, $5 to rent that movie for that time slot, and you just watch that with your favorite streamer, and they react, and you all chatting and everything. That would be super dope.
that's
That would
interesting.
be a great way for sales too, because Twitch will get commission off that.
Yeah.
Yep.
The only thing you'd have to do is just reach out to the individuals that own the movies to find a way to rent it, find out what that cost is. Yeah, that's definitely doable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that'll really benefit like old media, like for example, movie Dumb and Dumber. That hasn't made sales in forever, and then it could be resurrected or whatever, or any old media.
Very true. Yeah. Yeah. I think that would be huge too on Twitch, where you watch movies that pique your nostalgia, like '90s babies and all that. Like, yeah, you'd have so much different types of genre you'd be streaming. It wouldn't necessarily be new movies.
Cool. Um, that one's interesting though. Let's park that one. I definitely want to dive in a little bit deeper on how that all works out. Um, cool. Anything else from the squad before we break?
The only thing I've been thinking about is like on the same path as like the online courses and things like that. I learned about this website called Kajabi that is a website that helps you like create courses and host them for you. So it's like an all-in-one solution there, which I thought was really cool. And then some other websites for like selling ebooks, things like that. Um, Thinking about like coaching and like things like that. Some strategies there, but nothing, no specific businesses,
That's okay.
but
All right.
just like strategies for how to do the marketing and advertising for them.
That's like the third time that you brought up kind of like online coaching and like creating like online courses. So it might be something that you're just really passionate about. So if you have different deviations or things that you pivot off of that, 100% keep thinking of that and just share it with us. Maybe
Yep.
we can kind of think of different ways to incorporate other experiences that we've got or other things that we've come across that could help you kind of with some guidance or something like that.
My biggest thing right now is like picking the niche and like what my strengths are and like what I want to do. But like the influencer summit was really useful. And one of the things I really liked was they said just because you pick a niche doesn't mean you have to stay with it your whole career,
Mm-hmm.
but pick something that you are interested enough and passionate enough that you would want to stick with for like the next 2 to 3 years.
Mm.
And then after that, then you can kind of like branch out. But you want to go deep into one thing first instead of being like surface level on many different things. So that's what I've been currently thinking about and like rebranding my page, but looking at things around there and just been brainstorming what feels right.
All right, cool. Anything else? Andrew Naz?
Maybe it's too early for this week, but definitely next week. I just been really into computers, tech, and all that, and I'm kind of looking forward to the day we replace monitors with either a VR headset or what's out right now, which is Apple glasses. They use that for augmented reality, but essentially you'd have like a 4-inch by 4-inch OLED display that would replace essentially a 100-inch TV. Um, uh, it'd be all-encompassing view, and you'd be able to literally have as many monitors as you want, as many windows. Productivity would go through the roof. Um, Instead of having your usual webcam, you could have a 3D webcam uh, to capture yourself, which would integrate you into that VR headset. So once I go into a space for VR, I maybe see Dave or Andrew um, alongside with me, like literally see them as they are because of that 3D camera, um, and just yeah, interact there. especially with coronavirus and all that stuff. But I
Hmm.
think that'd be really cool too.
Oh yeah, that reminds me. Like I think the VR space, once it takes off, I think it'll take a couple of years because it's quite far away.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like horror movies and horror games will really do well once VR becomes more mainstream.
100%.
That'll be a super immersive experience.
So Facebook just released their new Quest, Oculus Quest 2. That's their it's now their best line. They have like I think they had three other lines of headsets, but that's their bread and butter now. Um, and I haven't looked into it yet, but that's supposed to take everything next level. Um, replace your monitors and everything too. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oculus Quest is owned by Facebook.
I think Facebook did buy them out. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think they bought them out a couple. Just gonna check here real quick.
Huh. Oh yeah, well it does say as of October 2020, all new Oculus players must use a Facebook account.
Okay, so it
But
says
there's
here
got to be a reason for that.
Oculus was acquired by Facebook in 2017.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't know that.
Mark Zuckerberg's shit.
Yeah.
Wow. Cool. Well, all right, folks. Thanks for the time, Twitch viewers. Thank you for following and watching. Utorn is saying Facebook originally promised they wouldn't force you to use a Facebook account when they bought it, but now they're doing it. Oh, I didn't either. But yeah, I will be posting these on YouTube. If it starts kicking off, then we'll make it its own account. For now, I just want to see what kind of appetite is out there. Folks on the call, what I'll tell you is that we've got like 11 people watching this right now. So there is an appetite for it in my Twitch community. So let's see what we can build off of it. And I think that obviously we're getting something out of it, hopefully individually and selfishly. But yeah, cool. Andrew, Naz, Troy, thank you very much. Same time next week.
Yeah, for sure.
Sounds good.
All right,
Sounds
guys.
great. Thank you.
Keep crushing it. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Yes. All right. Folks on the stream, I hope you enjoyed that. YouTube, I'm going to end the recording right now. We're going to do this weekly, hopefully. And I'll be posting this stuff for any of the references that you might need throughout the week. And in the description, I'll be posting all of the stuff that we're learning these things from. So, example, that happiness episode from the Real AF podcast, the books that we're reading, that kind of stuff. So, YouTube, I'll catch you later.